Welcome to Your Dailies, the podcast designed to help you on your journey of addiction recovery. We're going to go through the big book of AA and use our collective experience, strength, and hope to help you understand what addiction recovery really looks like. So grab some snacks, sit back, press play, and dig deep. Thanks for being here. Welcome to this episode of the Do Your Dailies podcast. I'm your host, Chris. And I'm here with my friends Dave and Joe. Hey guys, how we doing today?
Hey Chris, doing well.
It's a good day. The sun's out, it's shining. It's the day after Christmas. Not that we timestamped this, but we all should have some sort of grin on our face, whether we got a prize or ate part of a turkey or a sweet, I don't know, something.
Absolutely.
That we were there. How about that?
Yes.
How about we didn't ruin Christmas?
You know what?
Oh, that's so huge.
Yeah.
That's a whole...
What a great little segue, right?
We didn't, at least, I shouldn't say we. I didn't ruin Christmas yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I had I just got to tell you, so back when I was doing the bonfires and everything, I had a guy for this facility, and he came to the bonfire on Christmas Eve, and he looked at me and he said, do you know what? He said, I have ruined Christmas for 44 years in a row without missing one. He said, I'm not going to ruin it this year. He said, I'm actually going to be sober. And that just hit me,
Yeah.
And he got so emotional that he just, at least doing no harm. He was just going to be there and enjoy. And his family came to visit. And he said, I'm not going to ruin it. Isn't that wild?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And to the normie, they think, well, what's a big deal? But wow, my goodness, especially the family members that have been affected by it, by alcoholism and addiction and all other kinds of wild behavior. We're going to have a little bit of peace this year. It's just, what a miracle. What a miracle.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Very good. Well, this is our first episode digging into Bill's story. And we're going to break this into a few different segments and really trying to dig into the content and interpret and apply our own personal experiences and perspectives and provide that perspective to our listeners so that this might be of great use to them, better use to them in the quest for stronger recovery, quest for more fulfilling interpersonal relationships, sense of peace and joy, fulfillment, and all of those kinds of things. So, gentlemen, why don't we begin?
Could I just make a quick comment? Maybe just to tee this up a little bit. So, last time we talked about a couple of words. One was recreate our lives. The doctor talked about recreating our lives. And in there, and I specifically remember Joe reading about this psychic change. So to recreate something, my mindset's got to change. So I would just like to tee this up with, and we talked about the obsession of the mind. So as we read Bill's story, I would challenge the listener to look and identify where is his obsession of the mind showing up? And then how does his allergy show up after he drinks? But he gives us, and I might point out that this is a man, Bill Wilson, who took the time to sit down and open his kimono up, his flak jacket, and really expose his inner life. I mean, he took a great risk that to the world. This is who I was. This is what happened to me. This is how I was successful. This is how I failed. This is the type of alcoholic that I was. And the other thing I might add to this is see if you can identify with anything that he says in there in terms of how alcoholism is affecting him. That was one of the things that was taught to me early on, Dave. Every time you always find the differences, you've always got an excuse. You're always deflecting. Why don't you find a way in? And this isn't about shaming ourselves, but it's about identifying and seeing, okay, what's similar to my story to his? And more importantly, what did he do about it? So he's very, very detailed and talented in describing the problem and then later giving a solution and how to implement. But first, we're we're going to dig into this and just see who Bill Wilson was and see if there are some similarities between how his steps took place and how our steps take place walking through life. Okay.
Perfect. Joe, do you want to start us off reading?
Sure. Chapter 1, Bill's story. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we new young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned. We were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime, with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last. In the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time, we sailed over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is never forgot, whether he dieth of musket or by pot. Ominous warnings, which I failed to heed. 22, and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation, my talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the heads of vast enterprises which I would manage with the utmost assurance. I took a night law course and obtained employment as investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I proved to the world that I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. A potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius can conceive their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophical thought are so dry. I love that statement. That just kills me every time I read it. It's like the most profound experiences that you can have must be in an altered state, and you will have the most profound mental constructs come to you in an altered state. And I would have loved to actually found out what his wife said about that or what she thought about that, but oh my gosh,
Well, here's another thought on that, Joe. How would he know?
Yeah, exactly.
How would he know men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk? Man, you talk about just pulling it out of the air. He was
Pompous,
so
arrogant.
crack.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, there was nothing true about that. The most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived out of a bottle of whiskey.
But we also experience kind of the first time that he gets very, very vulnerable with us, and he tells us that, I'm in this law course, and one of the finals that I had, I couldn't even take it because I was so smashed. I wasn't drinking continuously by the time, but I mean, that right there tells you from the very beginning, he already was identifying that this is negatively impacting my life. But then he argues with his wife to say, no, you don't understand. What's going on inside of me is profound, which is for me, the only way to really truly understand that, if you've been through this, you probably understand this. There is kind of a real spiritual element involved in just getting in an altered state, and he's as much as acknowledging it, but he's trying to convince other people of it. And when we try to do that, it's only there's only a short amount of that going on before you start fumbling and falling down, and that's where we're about ready to go. So from my point of view, this makes all the sense in the world. It's like, okay, yeah, been there, done that, understand this. And then all of a sudden he jumps us into they're having these long talks, and then guess what's about to happen? By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of the alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang, all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain sureties, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more lessons later on. We gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle, the sidecar stuffed with tents and blankets, a change of clothes, 3 huge volumes of financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I'd had some success in speculation, so we had a little money. We once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my report to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many of the tune of paper millions. The great boon of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I had made a host of fair-weather friends. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrations of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in the sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. Now that's another thing that I just love about him. He's getting so honest about, like, I drop out of law school, I start getting in the markets, we go on this fantastic journey of like finding out what works in the markets, what doesn't work in the markets. He comes back, he actually gets money, and then before you know it, these relationships that he has start actually getting into arguments and fights and disagreements to where he's a lone wolf, and he acknowledges that. But then on top of that, he's also talking very clearly about the fact that drinking and being in an altered state of mind have really compromised his values to a point to where he's almost done things that have compromised that his relationship. But because of the drunkenness, he didn't get in those situations. But then it just continues. It doesn't stop. And I find that fascinating. Is he's aware of that. He writes this. He's talking about it. But it's like he doesn't recognize the things that later on he starts seeing. He just thinks, well, this area is bad environmentally, so I'm going to go somewhere else. And he runs out of the city, which he talks about. In 1929, I contracted gall fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud, while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I caught up with Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to croon around the exclusive course which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of a tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Now, with that, I'm going to end my part of the reading, but you know that's another very interesting statement that the banker was witnessing kind of what he was going through, but that amused skepticism wasn't just about the money that he was bringing in and taking out. It also had to do with the fact that he's saying everybody knew that I was like having a problem with alcohol. Any comments?
Yeah, it's interesting. If we could have heard from his wife, if we'd have said, well, so let's go back to these majestic constructions. The genius conceived. what does it look like from here? What does it look like from your point of view? Because we're going to get a very altered and tainted report from Bill, but what do you see? And it's really interesting where he goes on to say, and you know what, just all the friends, everything just starts to disappear. And that was my experience. People, I mean, sometimes I got mad if I did something, but for the most part, people just disappear. They just things just fall off. Whether it's family, friends, things that I used to do, they just go away. And that's why we say that, you know, alcohol is a tremendous. It's like a vampire. It just sucks everything, and before long, life just is now. It's almost myopic. There's just one thing. It's just the drink. And he throws in there, but he had the tan, you know, from the well-to-do, from the golf courses. But he's not catching up to the professionals. He's jittery, you know, and so. Again, to our listener, do you see he's being very honest and straightforward with all of this, but he's not seeing the blatant, obvious condition of his situation.
There's the justifications, and we seek the evidence that will validate our behaviors that we want to continue. You know, so look, I've got this tan. Look, I'm a genius now, honey. You know, I've just got to be drunk or high. We grasp at these straws to try to justify our behavior. And we sometimes even will acknowledge some of the downside, but we explain it away. We push it away. We mitigate it. It's not that bad. Or it's worth it, right? Because look at all the benefits to it.
And is that not an absolute perfect example of the obsession of the mind? Yeah. Notwithstanding the mountain of evidence that's before me, I am explaining it away. I've got this. I'm ducking and weaving. I'm throwing, you know, blocks and whatever I need to do so that it continues. That's what I want to keep bringing up. And he mentioned, Joe read that he fell asleep in a law file. I was in mechanical engineering at the University of Utah. I mean, it was a big exam that I was taking one day, and the only thing that woke me up was everybody rustling their papers to hand them in. I woke up and looked at my paper, and it didn't even have my name on it. The professor came down and looked at me. He just kind of put his hands out and said, what are you doing? And I just, you know, my mind wouldn't allow me to. I still remember it. I mean, that was a long time ago. I still remember just the disgust on his face because I'd had my head down the whole time. And me coming back with, to your point, mitigating, parrying, ducking, weaving. No, of course I failed the course. You know, how do you explain the F at the end of the day to the counselor? Well, you don't. And so anyway, yeah, just continue to see if you can see this obsession of the mind play out. I'll go ahead and read.
Before you do that, I want to just note that, you know, I've used this example in the past of if everybody's watching and I'm backing up, and I'm backing up toward a cliff, I'm relying on my friends, the onlookers, my peers, whomever that might be, to say, hey, hold on a minute. You can't see the danger that you're headed toward. We need to alert you. We need to stop you. We need to impede you. You know, they've got to say something. I'm relying on them to do that. And with alcoholism, with addiction, a handful of things happen, I think. But two that I've seen most often is the ones who are saying, hey, you're backing up, you can't see the cliff. We don't listen to them. We ignore them. I got this. Come on. I've done this a million times, or whatever it is. We discount their warning. Secondly, to the point where the warners give up. They get so tired of trying to help, of trying to warn us, of trying to say something, do something, that they give up. They say he's not listening to me anyway. What's the point?
Well, what's fascinating about that point right there is he said he made a host of fair weather friends. Fair weather means that if storm clouds come up, where do they go?
They're gone.
They're out of there. They're not the ones saying, hey, there's a cliff right behind you, you really need to stop. They're watching it and they're like, oh dude, he's going, we gotta go. You know, so So in that framework, he positions himself just before he starts exploring golf and going out to the country, because he's showing us the mental workup that he's saying, I've got a problem here, I don't have a problem here. But then automatically he jumps right into like acknowledging, yeah, I was going to take over Walter Hagen, but liquor took me before I could even get up to Walter Hagen's like standard, which is fascinating because he'd already admitted, hey, I'm already drinking day and night. And then he's having the problem in the city. He comes to the country where it's going to be different, but it becomes even more pronounced because now he's actually talking about the physiological aspect of he's jittery now, and he's not connecting the two at all. You can tell about how he's like giving us that example of like, yeah, I'm getting jittery, but then he also kind of goes into more of kind of an exclusive kind of part of how he's seeing all of that he's getting a tan, he's out, they allow him to drink day and night, which actually gives him an excuse, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just reinforcing this whole process that's getting him sicker and sicker and sicker, but he's not connecting dots. He's still involved in the lifestyle that actually he had even before he moved out of the city. It's just becoming even worse because they're basically supporting that process for him.
Well, then I would even submit, taking that point, your point, Chris, that there's a lot of people saying my ego is now such that I can take on all of you. You're all wrong. I don't need to look where the cliff is because I'm not going there. I am bigger, stronger, faster, all of it. And no, you're wrong. You can say it. It just goes. It bounces off me like I've got a force shield up. And that's, again, to me, that's the male ego, my ego, and that's the obsession of the mind. Creating a scenario where, regardless of what everyone around me is saying, there is still a strategy, and a good one, for me to go drink again.
Yeah.
None of all this evidence adds up or makes sense to me.
Right.
Okay. Abruptly in October 1929, all hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from the hotel bar to a brokerage office. So all hell's breaking loose, and he's wobbling around. He's already lit. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription of XYZ32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. Jeez. I'm not going to end it because I've got a solution.
Yeah.
I'll go drink. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. And as I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left, and I thought I'd better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me, but drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time, we stayed broke. We went to live with my wife's parents, and I found a job, then lost it as a result of a brawl with a taxi driver. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years and hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. Now go back, there's some of that grand genius. Mm-hmm. I'm completely drunk. She's working and exhausted in a department store, and I'm just drinking all day. I became unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. I think this is a very important comment. It ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. Now he's not drinking to party or have fun. Now he's drinking to survive.
Yeah. He's
actually drinking to feel better. And some of you may know what I'm talking about. Bathtub gym, 2 bottles a day, and often 3 got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to awaken very early in the morning. Here he talks about it, shaking violently. A tumbler of gin, followed by a half-dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. So back to something Joe read a few times ago, to distinguish the true from the false.
Yep.
This is it. So the medical solution to his problem was a tumbler full of gin and some beer before he could even eat. And nevertheless, regardless of all of this evidence, I still thought I could control the situation. He had no idea of the obsession of the mind at this point. He certainly did not have understanding of the allergy that once he starts, he cannot stop.
So that's the definition right there of the obsession. I've got control, and in the midst of everybody else's like, are you serious? He still believes that concept. That's how powerful the obsession of the mind truly is. That I've got control, and yet everything speaks to the fact that that's not true.
Right. And one of the really insidious things is so often the person actually believes it.
Yeah.
The mind betrays us in such a way that we actually believe what we're saying is true to a certain level.
Sure.
You know, yeah, no, this is fine. This is normal. I'll get back to, I can quit what I want. You know, I'll get back to work. I'll get back to making money. I'll get back to all these things. The denial is incredible.
Well, gradually things got worse. Now his house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died, and my wife and father-in-law became ill. So it's starting to stack up. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point in 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished. That's an interesting piece to me. This is what's all been happening. People dying, his wife working, lost my house. And at the very whisper of a potential uptick, he uses the word prodigious bender. Now, I don't know what that means. Does that mean a month? Does that mean 2 weeks? And so, but you have to hand it to the guy. Somehow, he said, and I somehow, he can't even remember, he doesn't even remember how, he formed a group. So there was still some trust in him to buy something, and then he was going to share, and this is a way out. And at the very whisper of that, he's off to the races again, and they just look at him. And I think that word vanished goes back to my point, is that I don't know that he wasn't even communicating with them. They just disappear. Yeah. They just take a look and say, okay, he put the group together, but we don't know where he is. We're going over here. I mean,
is it possible that process of vanishing occurred because he vanished? You know, because that's honestly how I take that, because the chance vanished because he was no longer in the capacity to think or act right. He was in that altered state, and then.
And I just know for myself, when I go on something like that, I disappear. I mean, there's no party, there's no gathering, it's just gone. So I woke up. This had to be stopped. That's the first time he really says that, I think. Just, a couple of paragraphs earlier, I still thought I could control, but now this had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. Now that's the first time he's
acknowledged it.
He's saying there's something here. When I take one, it turns into 100 or whatever it is. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so did I.
So now, I've said this before.
Yep.
I know I've promised you. I've promised God. I've sworn off the drink. I've committed, so on and so forth. All those other times, I was lying. All those other times, I didn't get it. But today, I get it. Now I swear. I promise. Right.
And he was so convincing that she happily observed.
Yeah.
He writes that. She was happy. Oh, I'm rocking and rolling now, man. I got her believing.
I got an answer. I got a solution. I'm done. No more drink for me, man.
I meant business, or she observed that I meant business, and so I did.
So he believes. He believes this.
Yeah.
And that's actually good news. Except for what happens next.
Well, he doesn't even go into any detail. All he says is the next sentence is shortly after. Now, what's shortly?
A few hours?
My bet is it's within the day.
Yeah. Because he's in the midst of the obsession of the mind, and it's not going anywhere.
Well, it was
and the allergy of the body.
Yeah, and it was long enough that he had to go somewhere because he came home drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So at least he drove somewhere. Okay. There had been no fight. That's what's fascinating.
Yeah.
The sentence or two before, I meant business, and there had been no fight. The obsession was in complete control. Where had my, and he asked, where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. I think that's very telling. He had made such a resolve to his wife, and I meant business and all of it. No fight. It didn't even cross his mind that he had said, I'm done.
Nope. Didn't even hit the radar screen of like, maybe this is a bad idea. No, he doesn't even acknowledge that. He's like, it wasn't even there.
Well, then he makes an interesting comment. Someone had pushed a drink my way. Well, where were you?
Obviously a bar.
So I go into a bar to abstain, and I'm fully resolved, and I personally know what this, I know exactly what this is like because I've done it myself. You walk in there to drink club soda and eat the peanuts.
Yeah, to watch the game, to have a burger. I'll have...
No, it seems completely reasonable.
Yep.
I have no intention of drinking whatsoever.
Well, and the question could be, have you ever gone in this establishment and not drank, Dave? Ever? Once? Oh. No, but today...
Today I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. Here we go. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed, and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. What does he mean by that, fellas?
He got too cocky. The arrogance replaced.
I got this.
I got this.
Mm-hmm.
I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. There's another fanatic. That's how he explains the allergy. I had a guy once tell me, he said, are you telling me this is like what, when I go buy a 2-pound bag of M&M's, peanut M&M's? And I said, why'd you buy the 2-pound bag instead of the small one? And he said, well, they're cheaper. No, you bought the 2-pound because you're going to eat 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Don't tell me they were cheaper. Buy the peanut.
Yeah.
Come on, man. And so he goes in for some reason, but it just turns out that in this cafe there happened to be a bar as well, is what I'm taking that. And as the whiskey rose to my head, once again the obsession kicks in. I'm going to do better next time. I haven't the 10 times before or the 100 times, but next time. That is a masterful job of the obsession of the mind, in my opinion. And as long as we're here, instead of having one, because we really can't.
One's good, but you know what? 3 really sounds better.
And there's a perfect example of when the allergy, when that first drops hits his lips, then it's off to the races, and we might as well. So think about that for a second. That's the obsession of the mind now co-signing the allergy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Now they're working in tandem. And that's where it really goes. When the allergy kicks in and I can't stop, and the obsession is just rooting me on. Just keep going, Dave, keep going. Now he starts to talk a little bit about what's going on inside. The remorse, the horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with 12 glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. We're about to hear something that's very, very critical. So pay attention here. Should I kill myself? There's a question mark there, and then right after, no, with the line, not now. So he's already, okay.
He's contemplated it.
He's contemplating, it's there, but not right now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that, and so 2 bottles, and oblivion. But I just like to point out now the obsession, and he's got a lot, because there's still, and I don't know how to explain this, but there's still part of our brain that's the survival piece. So our brain, the obsession of the alcoholism, yes, but there's still a part that's a survival mechanism that says, well, no, not now, not today.
Sure.
And that comes into play. And to me, that's just divine intervention. That's just divine construction, you know. And so what does he do? He realizes, hey, the best way to get out of this thinking is just give me some gin. It would fix it, and 2 bottles, and then oblivion, and just go away. And some of us know exactly what he's talking about. But he's in a tough spot. You know, should I kill myself? In other words, it's all, he's now starting to see the construct of the genius combined with alcohol is now just, there's so many examples now.
Sure.
That there's no more argument. You know?
Denial has been wiped away by personal experience.
Yep. There's a lot of evidence. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony for 2 more years. That's quite miraculous, actually.
That's actually a long time, too.
Yeah. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window, or the medicine cabinet where there was a poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and the mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leapt. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. The next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity, and so did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. He's in a pretty tough spot. Maybe, I don't know, do we take a moment there and just, the physical and mental torture was so hellish? I think those are powerful words, you know, that he writes and lets us know very clearly. He uses the English language to explain exactly what was going on inside of him at that time.
You know, that concept is shared again, that he's going from city to country and back. He sought escape. That escape is really like, I want control, but he's not finding it anywhere. And he's literally just crying out, you know, I don't want to die, but I am so seriously consumed by this thought and what I've been doing that the only way that I can really survive right now is he has to take his mattress downstairs so he doesn't do something insane, like people have been concerned about his sanity. And the doctor comes, and he's given not only a sedative, but now he's drinking and taking the sedative all at once to, like, just completely get into that state of oblivion that he was talking about. And it only just gets even worse, you know. Because obviously when you're losing 40 pounds and you're underweight, that means that you're just drinking, taking maybe the sedatives to compensate for that, but you're not eating. You know, he's seriously deteriorating.
Yeah. I'd like to just share something here. He makes the comment, you know, he's a smart man. He said, the mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this for 2 more years. I had a fellow once, because of my arrogance and my ego, he said, I want you to imagine that you're standing at the edge of a loading dock. So the loading dock would be down about 5 feet, and I'm right at the edge of it. He said, imagine, if you will, take a gallon, like a gallon of milk, a jug, a plastic jug, a gallon, and fill it full of alcohol in your mind. And then place it right below you, right next to the loading dock, so you have a perfect view. And then stack the next one and the next one. Make them 10 deep, Dave, so you can count 10 jugs of alcohol. And now you're at the corner, so now you've got it 10 deep this way. So now, do you have another row of 10? Put the next jug next to the first one, and now make a second row. So now you've got 2 rows, you've got 20 jugs. Put a third. And I will leave it to you, Dave, to decide how many rows of 10 gallons of alcohol you would put there so that you could see them all. Whatever that number is, he said, I want you to stop and pause for a moment. And he said, just listen. Don't argue. I don't want to hear anything. Just listen to what I tell you. And he said, your body, your brain, your liver, the nervous system, everything has had to metabolize and swim through and navigate each jug, each gallon of this whiskey. And your assumption was that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and that my brain's still going to pop and my legs are still going to work and I can navigate business or sports or whatever it is I'm going to do. He said, that's quite an assumption, isn't it? How many jugs it had. And he said, did you ever stop and think that maybe at some point it would just be too much? He said, I'm going to ask you, have you ever seen anyone who has had too much? And I said, I have. And I watched their brain. And friends of my father. And one was in a sanitarium and the other one died. And he said, and what was your attitude? My attitude was, I'm smarter than them. I'm better than them. I'm stronger. I said, it didn't deter me 1 ounce. And he said, and what do you think they said earlier on? And so, while yes, it's tremendously strong, I would just take a moment and say the gratitude that I have for the spiritual, the physical, and the mental construct that is our body is such a miraculous thing. And to think that what I have put it through, and somehow I can still sit here today and talk, that I can tie my shoe and walk and navigate life, I'm very fortunate for that. And he saw that. And I think he had, too, a very good insight as to how strong it was. That didn't deter him. But if we just kind of take a time out for a moment and say, what a blessing our physical body is. We only get one. And boy, some of the things that we do to it. So just a thought to maybe be grateful for what we do have.
I think our minds are filled with this ego that we can do things beyond our limitations. I think often we expect that things will just work out, and we struggled sometimes to do the work, to put in our effort to influence those outcomes. And so as we hear about Bill's story, just the certainty, I've got this, I'm done, I'm never going to do it again, and there wasn't the follow through. And I'm not suggesting that he did nothing to try to shore up that commitment that he made. but it was inadequate, at least. It wasn't sufficient. And so he went back out. Whatever the term that we want to use, he relapsed, he lapsed, he fell off the wagon, whatever it was. His intervention, the things that he tried to do to keep him from falling back into those habits, it wasn't enough. And we are, from my observation, a society of, I don't want to overdo it when it comes to the treatment. I don't want to overdo it when it comes to restraint and those kinds of things. I need some professional help. Maybe I'll go to a meeting. Okay, if the meeting works, then that's great. Absolutely. If that's all you needed, then that's wonderful. We're happy. What a blessing. Often enough, it's not enough. And so more support, counseling, sponsor, group therapy, whatever it is. Okay, maybe I'll try those kinds of things. With resistance, with hesitation, I don't want to go, but she's telling me I have to, they're telling me I have to, my work says this, or whatever it is. Rarely, if ever, do people go, well, let's just be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Let's jump into more treatment and intervention than we think might be necessary. And let's assess the situation, stabilize, and then whittle it down. Reduce the interventions. Reduce the supports, right? The treatments, the therapies, and all of that. And so I hear that from Bill's story. Just not enough. The intervention wasn't adequate to get him to quit at that time, to sustain that sobriety at that time. And so to our listener and to ourselves, is what we're doing enough? Whether it be to get and remain sober, strengthen our recovery, other things in our lives as far as business go, as far as humanitarian efforts, as far as our relationships with family, friends, and peers. Are we doing even the bare minimum? Because sometimes we think, well, how much do I have to do? What is that bare minimum? And sometimes we fall short even of that. But why not go the next step? Why not take it a step further, just to be sure, right? Because this hell that he's talking about, we think about that and we might even remember times and go, yeah, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. But how did we get out of it? And it's kind of an open-ended question, a rhetorical question for people to look within. How did we get out of that hell? How are we, and I'm going to word this intentionally, how are we staying out of that hell? It's not, oh, I'm done, I'm gone from there, I'm never going back. It's, this is what I'm actively doing to keep myself from falling back in. So,
I think this part of the chapter has gotten us right to that point. It's like nothing he's done, even though he's been so convinced he's done and he knows a better way and all he has to do is just be done. That was not enough. He just keeps falling back into the old patterns, the old routines, and he can't stop. It doesn't matter if he's in the city. It doesn't matter if he's in the country. It doesn't matter if he has money. It doesn't matter if his wife has the money. He's finding a way to make his addiction still work. And that's literally the obsession and the allergy wrapped up into the perfect package that absolutely we have no defense against this process of when it's in our head. We don't have any defenses that are going to work because it's not going to stop.
He was even so observant that his wife's purse was slender as he was taking whatever was in there. And so a couple things. One, again, I just want to express my gratitude that he wrote this down. That he came back, and this is a scouting trip. These are the scouting notes. Hey,
yeah.
This is where I've been. Just heads up, pay attention. And last week, I had challenged people to become a day maker. And that falls right in line with what Joe was talking about, the psychic change. And I'll tell a quick story and then we'll be done. So there's a lady and she owns a salon and she does women's hair. And she had a routine customer would come in and kind of get the basics. And then one day this woman came in and wanted the full treatment, all of it. And this hairdresser told her how nice she looked, how good her hair looked, and she just looked wonderful. And the woman left. Turns out that the hairdresser received a note from that woman that left and said, I just want to thank you. You saved my life that day that I came in to get my hair done. Because on that day, the reason I was going to have it done so nicely is because I was going to take my life soon after I left your salon. You made my day. And what did the woman do? She did her hair. She made some compliments that were sincere and authentic. I would submit to you that she saw the woman. She noticed her. She commented. So my wife is the one that shared this with me. And there's a book out there and I've read it. She said, I want to be a day maker. And I said, what does that mean to you? And she told me. And to have the psychic change that Joe read about, we have to do different things. We can't just say I'm different. We have to actually do. So it's been my practice for the last, I'm going to say 3 weeks, to try to, I won't be so arrogant to say I'm making someone's day, but my small little attempt is to see people. And it's amazing where you will see them.
Oh, yeah.
At the convenience store. And yesterday, I can't remember now where I was, and I went to pass. I'd done something, and this young person said, hey, Merry Christmas. And I stopped, and I turned, and I said, you know what? Thank you. And I want you to have a Merry Christmas. I hope you're getting off of wherever they were. It must have been Christmas Eve, where they were working. It was at a convenience store, I think. And she just looked at me like I had a horn growing out of my head. Like, what? Yeah. You would stop and say that? And my wife went to buy her drink, and the person in front of her just turned around and said, Merry Christmas, it's on me. And she said, she said, I wanted to turn around and buy the next person. Yeah. And so what I've come to find out about this day maker, this isn't about huge meteoric changes. This is about seeing people. And so the first piece of psychic change that I would challenge us is to maybe start seeing ourselves. And if you can't do that, then see someone else. Maybe someone, helped you at home. Maybe, I don't know what it is. I won't go into all the detail. But be a part of making someone's day is where I'm going with that. So.
I love that. It's such an inspiring feeling to have somebody see you, to have somebody express that kind of kindness and generosity. And it makes us want to repay it, to pay it down the line. And imagine the world that we'd create if we were all looking for those opportunities to see somebody. And some of those gestures might be big, and some of them are so simple.
Yeah.
The holding of a door, a Merry Christmas, you look lovely today, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Okay, and on the subject of day makers, I've encouraged you to read the book Living Fearless. Get into that because it talks about exactly what you're talking about, but on a much deeper level.
Well, what a privilege. Thanks, guys.
Living Fearless, yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We will press pause here in Bill's story. We'll pick up next time. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your time and your trust and faith in us. And as always, we hope that our message today has impacted your life, that you will put it to good use, that you will apply the things that we're talking about, that your life will be better as a result. And if you have not yet downloaded our free mobile app, we invite you to do so in either the App Store or the Google Play Store under Hobble Creek Behavioral Health. You'll be able to find this podcast and a bunch of free recovery resources. And we hope that you will have a great rest of your day. Take care. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Do Your Dailies podcast. If you like what you hear and what we're talking about, please like and subscribe and share this show with your friends. That's the best way to support us bringing you more content. You can follow us on YouTube and Facebook at Do Your Dailies and on X at DoYourDailies_. This podcast is brought to you by Hobble Creek Behavioral Health and is edited and produced by Motley Sounds.